guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make the Grinch as a cake topper. So a lot of you guys requested the Grinch, and I did do the Grinch a few years ago back when the film came out, but that was the cake face version of him. So this time I wanted to have a go at the topper because this has to be my favourite Christmas movie, I think.
So for this one, we're going to start with Rice Krispie treats, which is just a mix of Rice Krispies and marshmallows mixed together. You're going to microwave the marshmallows till you melt them basically and add Rice Krispies to them. I usually use about the same amount of both. Just be careful that it's not too hot when you are handling it, let it cool a little bit first. And you're going to really tightly jam pack these together. So I'm making a large ball for the head, but squeeze it really tight together. In fact, let's make it slightly teardrop to match the shape of his head. The reason we're going with Rice Krispies inside is because it is such a large figure, this one, and it would be really heavy if we did it entirely in modelling paste. Also, it works out way more expensive to just use your modelling paste in such large quantities. So we are going to use Rice Krispie treats in the middle. And then also like a thin little teardrop for the body as well. The body is only small. You could possibly get away without using Rice Krispie treats in that, but I've made enough to do the body in them, so let's do that in it too. So that will firm up a bit shortly. I'm going to make the Grinch on a piece of polystyrene. I've got a couple of kebab skewers. One's a bit shorter than the other, but for this it'd be fine. Just want to make sure they're in upright. These are going to go inside the legs. And we're going to use some Saracino modelling paste. So you can use whichever one you want, but this one, I use this one pretty much most of the time for most of the models. You'll see it's quite crumbly to start with, but once you knead it, it goes to like a nice sort of chewing gum consistency, which is what you want it to be like. It was perfect colour, this one, so I used the pre-coloured green one ready for it. I'm going to roll it thin, and we're going to we only need some small pieces. We're going to just cover those sticks in this modelling paste. So I've marked on the stick with an edible pen whereabouts I want this to sort of start and end. So the bottom, the point bit, isn't covered because that's the bit that sticks into the polystyrene dummy that I had earlier. And we're going to do this with both of them. Just make sure that they're similar thickness to each other. And then I'm just going to use a Dresden tool. I've got the metal Dresden tool here, but you can use a plastic one or whatever one you've got. Just drawing in his little hairlines. You need to do this before the modelling paste gets too firm. Just going to push them back in that polystyrene. And let's make him some little feet. So I'm just going to take a small piece of the green. We're going to roll it so it's pointy at both ends, and I'm going to cut that in half. Put a little slit at the wider end of each foot, and we'll wrap this around the ankle. Squeezing it tight around the back and then sort of pulling it up the leg slightly like that. So once it's in place, you can then put more of the Grinch's hairlines on his feet. Just going to curl up those toes a tiny bit. And it's the younger version of the Grinch we're doing in this one. So this one's from the 2018 film because that one is my favourite. So next we're going to cover the body. So I'm taking some more Saracino paste, just flattening it out a little bit. I've still got quite a bit of thickness on the paste, otherwise you're going to see through to all the Rice Krispies. And we'll just pull that around there, stretching it and sort of blending it together. Now, if you don't get rid of the seam fully, it doesn't matter too much on this one because we're going to add those hairlines all over the body. But do your best to sort of smooth it out as much as you can. Then we're just going to add the hairlines to this. I've left the bit at the top of the neck without the hairlines. You can add them if you want, but he's going to be wearing a scarf, so that is going to be covered up later. And you want to make sure you've done the back as well as the front. I'm now taking the larger ball of the Rice Krispie treats, which is going to go inside the head, so we're just going to cover that up. Again, I've got the modelling paste quite thick so that I can play around with pushing in the features. He wants to stay to that teardrop shape. Have a look at a picture of the Grinch while you're doing this as well, because it does help. I don't do this from memory. I do have an image next to me to copy from. So we're pushing in his eyes and sort of above the eyes, the eyebrow area. And spend a while playing around with the shape, sort of thinning it anywhere that you think it needs thinning, rounding it off anywhere underneath the chin. And then when you're happy with the shape, you can put in some eye sockets. I'm just going to use a balling tool for this. So just widen those sockets to the size we need them to be. I'm just going to mark on sort of below his nose, that line that goes down his face. Just going to put a little line in for each eyelid. So just using the wider end of my Dresden tool, I'm going to push in a mouth quite near the bottom of his face. Just open it up a tiny bit. So I've gone for a slightly darker bit of green and rolled a little nose for him. We'll darken that later with a bit of colour. I'm just going to try and push in two little indentations for his nostrils. Then I can put some hairlines on his face once I'm happy with the shape of it. Starting small near the nose area, and we'll make them a little bit longer and deeper as we come further out towards the side of the face. And I'm just going to cover his whole head and face like this. We'll go a little bit longer again as we get to the bit of hair on the top of his head, keeping some long lines up there. And don't forget to do his eyebrow area as well. Press in fairly deep there too. Next, I'm going to fill the eye sockets with some white modelling paste. So I'm using modelling paste instead of fondant, guys, because it is much firmer, so it doesn't lose its shape as much when I'm working with it. If I try and use fondant, it's very soft, and I end up with a lot of fingerprints in it while I'm working on it, and also it loses its shape while I'm doing it. Try and add a tiny piece of white in there for some teeth, pushing it into the top part of his mouth. I've rolled some dark green to the side. That's going to be for his pupils in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to roll some black for a nice line around each eye. I'll try and roll both pieces nice and thin with a point on both ends. I'll try and get them the same length, even though I try, it's never quite the same. And we're going to put that around each eye. Now, I have put a little bit of water around the edge of the white of the eye to help this to stick. You can use edible glue as well if you prefer. Water usually works fine for me though. So it doesn't go fully all the way around the edge of the eye, but that's fine. I'm just pushing it in place a little bit with my paintbrush, pushing those points or those corner bits into the edge of the eye as much as I can. Then I've got a small circle cutter that we're just going to use for cutting out some darker green, and this will be the iris on each eye. Take 2 tiny balls of black modelling paste. We're going to roll them and squish them a tiny bit so they're flatter, and I'm going to push those in the middle of each of the green circles. And I've got like a mucky colour green. It's a mix of black and my green mixed together to create some little eyebrows. And let's just stick them up there like that. And we'll put some more hairlines through those as well, so they're nice and textured to match the rest of his face. Then let's try and darken around the edge of the iris. I'm going to use an edible pen. I'm not always very neat with this. You can paint if you prefer, guys. Then I blend the pen slightly with a damp brush. So let's add some whites in the eyes for a bit of a sparkle. So we've got 2 small balls of white. Let's just push them in place. Let's go for another 2, but smaller. They're so tricky to roll them this small, especially when your hands are really cold like mine are at the moment. So let's just try darken the nose a little bit. You could use your coloured powders, but I'm going to use the pen because it's about the right colour. So I'll just colour the bottom part of the nose, and again, just blend it slightly with a damp brush. Now I'm going to move on to the powders for shading the rest of the face though. So I've got a mix of different greens. You can use any brand here. I've got the fractal ones. I've got the white in the rainbow dust one, but yeah, whichever ones you want. You just want to make sure they are edible ones. I'll link below the video everything I've used in this one, guys. So I want it to look lighter in the middle of his face and then sort of get a bit brighter and darker as it comes further out towards the edges. Again, I haven't got my picture here to show you, but I was looking at an image of the Grinch as a kid when I was making this one. It just helps me see whereabouts I need to change the colour and make him a little bit darker, or even where I need to lighten him up a bit as well. You don't have to add the shading. You can completely miss this part if you don't like to add the colour, or if you like him as he was before, that's fine. Okay, so I need to push a hole into the body where those legs are going. It's pretty firm at this point now, is my Rice Krispies, so that's why I'm trying to push a hole in first, or 2 holes, and then you're going to push your body onto those sticks. So very carefully push him on. You will need a bit of force because those Rice Krispies are firm. Just watch those sticks don't come out the side of the neck while you're doing it. I still need to put the hairlines on the back of the body on this one, which I should have done earlier because he's now quite firm, which is going to make it really difficult to now do. So once he's on, I'm just going to widen the legs slightly at the top by just adding a little bit more modelling paste up there. I'll do the same on both legs, so I'm going to try and blend it from the body to the leg. It's also going to help secure the legs to the body too. And then once you've blended that on, you're going to put your hairlines in there too. Do that on each leg. I'm adding a really wet piece of paste to the top of his neck, and then I'm just going to push in a cocktail stick, just because the bit of skewer I've got out the top of his neck isn't long enough to hold his head on, so we're going to have to add a cocktail stick in there to help hold him in place. Or you can add 2 if you feel like the head is quite heavy. If one won't support it, you can add a couple of sticks in there. And these are the food cocktail sticks. I realise in different countries you guys don't call them cocktail sticks, do you? Is it toothpicks elsewhere? And you're going to carefully push onto the body. You will need a bit of force to get this on. So once the head's on, we can do some shading on the body. So anywhere, again, that you want to look a little bit darker. You'll see I've left the top of the neck without it on. That's only because the scarf is going to go there. And then we're going to shade sort of all the underneath, and his legs would be in the shade a bit more. So let's darken those too. And I'm just putting the dusts on dry. I haven't wet these for this one. I'll link below the paintbrush I'm using for this one as well. It is a really nice brush, this one. Okay, so for the arms, we're going to roll a nice thin piece of the green modelling paste. I'm just going to squish each end down and they will become the hands. And then let's put some fur texture on here. It's quite tricky on the arms. I think some of it I might leave to do when I've stuck them in place on the body. And then let's cut in some fingers, starting with a thumb. And then let's divide the rest of the hands so that he has 4 fingers by cutting out little triangles. He's got fairly thin, long fingers, but I think that's fine for the Grinch. You can play around with pulling them into different positions. And then we're going to stick these in place on the body. So on the picture, his hands come just below his body, so I'm going to put them about there. Just make sure you've got them both the same length. And then we're going to stick them on. So next we're going to swap to some red modelling paste for the scarf, and I'm going to roll a fairly long bit. I want to texture it a little bit just so it's not too smooth. I'm using this piping nozzle, so I think it's a grass effect one. And I'm just sort of pressing it in and twisting it slightly all over. Then let's make some little tassels for the end just by cutting some little lines in the bottom. Let's remove the in-between bits so we can see the tassels, or I don't know what the ends of the scarf are called, sorry guys. I'm going to call them tassels. Put some little balls at the top of each tassel. Try and make them look a bit more like they're a scarf just by putting some lines in. Then I'm going to dust the pattern on the scarf just with some black edible powder. So I'm putting some water on his back where I'm going to press this. I have only put the powder on one side of the scarf, but you should really do it on the front and the back. Okay, so we need a little bit to go around his neck as well. Just make sure it's long enough that it wraps all the way around. I'm going to texture this. I've put a slight dip in the middle, and then we're going to wrap that around his neck. Okay, and then he's just going to want the pattern adding onto this bit as well. Just be careful now because the black dust can just go everywhere, so you don't want to drop it too much on his body as it will leave dark marks. Okay, I think he's finished. Let's just add him to a cake now.
So we're going to push him in by using the skewers that are sticking at the bottom. Now you can put him in the top of the cake, but your skewers really should be longer. They're not, I haven't made them long enough. He will just topple out the top of a cake. So I've just basically covered his polystyrene base that he was already on, and I've pushed it up against the cake. I have fully covered it, so the polystyrene's not going to actually come into contact with the cake, and then I'm just going to sit him back in there. So he's kind of part leaning against the side of the cake to support the weight of him a bit. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. I have got another video coming out very soon of the cake itself. Also, I've done a buttercream version as well as a fondant version for those of you that aren't as keen on fondant. But I hope you enjoyed making the topper. If you have a go, I'd love to see what you make. You can tag me in your creations on Facebook and Instagram. See you next time.